Will an unexpected long-lost family relation end up throwing a major wrench into Spider-Man's battle against Torment and Carnage? Well, we'll find out together as we dig on into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 26, a continuation of the events of Death Spiral. Oh, but we're not done yet, because over in the pages of Iron Man issue number 4, has Tony Stark met his match both literally and figuratively in the all-new advanced Iron Man? Well, we'll find out together, won't we, as we dig into two of the biggest Marvel books hitting comic shelves this week. So without further ado, let's get into it together, shall we? So then, when we last left off, Carnage had finally completed his master plan of joining with the mysterious serial killer known as Torment, and now because they're one, Carnage can actually look inside this guy's mind, and for the first time ever, we actually get some little snapshots and little insights into what this guy's deal might be. Apparently, he's been seeing Spiral since he was a kid, the invisible connections that tie families together. Carnage also surprises the shit out of me in this scene too by mentioning the Uzumaki and wondering if Torment is a fan. Wow, you know, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, Joe Kelly as a writer continues to amaze me with his reference pool. He is actually a couple years older than my own father. I was not expecting the manga Uzumaki to get a shout out here. Another fun creative thing they do in this issue is actually give Torment and Carnage the bulk of the internal monologue duty as they mock Spider-Man, saying that it must really be serious and dire now, that Spider-Man must be crapping his pants in fear because for the first time all fight, he's gone quiet. Spider-Man admits that he's unprepared for this current challenge. Carnage is tough to take down at the best of times, and he still doesn't fully understand what Torment's deal is, meaning that he's fighting essentially blind. Worse still, Spider-Man is fighting alone. Eddie got taken out at the end of the previous issue after losing the Carnage symbiote, meaning I guess he's going to die soon. Then you have poor Dylan, who had to get picked up by Mary Jane Venom. He's still very upset about the death of Paul and asks Venom if he will avenge him. And hey, in a nice bit of character growth, MJ Venom says, "We don't do that, we don't kill, even if we are very angry." Dylan's reaction is pretty telling and pretty priceless too. He essentially says, "Oh yeah, you don't kill now, but you used to. What happened to you, man? You used to be cool." Now, after getting knocked around for a while, Peter eventually gets the smart idea that maybe he can try and drive a wedge between the brand new newlyweds and Carnage and Torment. After all, Carnage is all chaos and bloodlust, while Torment seems to be a lot more regimented, a lot more focused. And indeed, this actually ends up paying off. Carnage naturally wants to kill Spider-Man and have it be done with once and for all, but Torment, for the second time in as many issues, straight up refuses, saying that it is not time yet, that the spiral is not complete. You see, this is what happens when you move in too early with one another. You don't know each other's eccentricities yet. Now, by the time Venom actually makes the scene again, Torment is long gone. Spider-Man is licking his wounds, but the big question is, what the hell are they going to actually do with Eddie now? They need to get him to a hospital before Torment ends up claiming another life. Now, once again, MJ, or maybe it's the symbiote, it's actually kind of hard to tell, has nothing but disdain for Eddie and his actions. Before I thought she was a little out of place, but here she actually goes a long way to explain herself in much better fashion. She says that they're only in this situation because of Eddie. He chose to join with Carnage, and then he wasn't strong enough to keep Carnage from messing around in his head and discovering all of Eddie's friends' secret identities. But he is still Dylan's father, and enough people have died already, so I guess they are going to have to take him to the hospital while Spider-Man tries his hardest to track down where exactly Torment and Carnage are going to hit up next, which is actually something of a mystery, as there are currently a few moving targets that he could potentially go after. There's Aunt Anna, who is currently being chauffeured around by Flash Thompson Anti-Venom, as well as Aunt May, who is currently hosting the Feast Foundation's Family Fun Night with her brand new boyfriend. Geez, say that 10 times fast, why don't you? Now, over at the hospital, Eddie regains consciousness long enough to finally have a long overdue conversation with his son, but also with MJ and the symbiote. He says that he never planned for things to spin out of control the way he did, that he joined with the Carnage symbiote not only to save his own life, but in the vain hope that he would be strong enough to make sure that the symbiote couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. And oh man, Mary Jane really unloads on him on this one, but in a really fascinating way. She likens Eddie's behavior and his constant excuse-making to her own canonically really shitty father saying that addicts are always good at lying, especially to themselves. You know, Mary Jane likening Eddie and his journey to that of an addict is probably the moment where in the subtext of Eddie Brock, and especially everything that was going on in that Charles Soule's Carnage book, just kind of becomes text, because if you read that book, and I know I've mentioned it before, it was basically about a guy who had been clean and sober for a bit, was seeing his kid, was rebuilding his life, got a new job, before eventually falling off the wagon, and now it's just straight up part of the story, and I have to wonder, man, where are they gonna build from here? They've brought Eddie about as low as they could possibly bring him, and I have to wonder, you know, what's next for him after this story, because he doesn't have the Carnage book anymore, so I don't know. Now, eventually, Carnage and Torment zero in on their next target, but interestingly enough, it is neither Aunt May nor Aunt Anna. Instead, they have their sights set on a restaurant called Marco's. Now, why on earth would that be, you're wondering? Surely Carnage and Torment have killed all the Brocks left in New York City. Maybe MJ has more family we didn't know about? Well, no, strap on in and get ready for one hell of a surprise. Because Spider-Man swoops on in and just narrowly manages to make the save before Torment can strangle the life out of one of the restaurant workers. Why he even very cleverly manages to weaponize a nearby flambe to attack Carnage, fire of course being one of the few things that still actively hurt symbiotes. It's as the fight rages on though, Torment lets it slip that his next victim in this situation is Spider-Man's cousin, but wait, Peter doesn't know about any cousin, especially not some first cousin. This is just as much a surprise to him as anyone, and even after when he briefly looks like he might get the upper hand on the fight, Torment escapes by activating the Shocker Gauntlet again. Spider-Man is able to save the guy inside, but the hits keep on coming. Yeah, he heard that conversation that Spider-Man had with Torment, and he says, wait, are you my cousin? Peter very quickly plays it off by saying that this guy shouldn't listen to the words of a crazed madman, but still you have to wonder, oh man, a secret familial relation that he did not know about. Is this guy from May's side of the family or Ben's side of the family? Will we ever see him again? Will Aunt May end up being the next target now that Torment and Carnage are free? Well, I guess we'll have to find out next time, won't we? And with that, we come to the brand new Iron Man from this week. We get treated to a little flashback wherein we get a nice sense of the type of teacher Dr. Adam Ware was, one that told his struggling students not to strive for the greatness of people who already exist in the tech world, like your Tony Starks, but instead chart their own course and be their own unique people, which of course is very interesting because we know he was kidnapped by Madame Mask and AIM for essentially the sole purpose of trying to torture him into becoming the next great Tony Stark who could deliver them the next great weapon of mass destruction. So far though, this plan isn't exactly going AIM's way. None of the other prisoners are particularly up to snuff so far, and Ware is actually staying true to his own ideals even amidst horrible shocks and beatings, so much to the point the Fixer thinks it's time that he and Madame Mask cut their losses completely. Some of the prisoners actually have managed to build them new tech, and Fixer thinks that he can jury-rig them together into an armor weapon that would be capable of challenging Tony and his own suit. Mask reminds him who's in charge and ends up completely shooting him down, but keep this in mind because Fixer will not be deterred. Now, where is Tony right now? Well, he's in the bowels of the helicarrier, desperately trying to escape. He knows that Mask is using Mysterio and arcade tech to try and mess with him by producing horrifying illusions. How does he get out of this? Well, the same way Tony gets out of everything. He builds himself a brand new suit of armor, one modeled after Mysterio that is, you guessed it, purple and green with a fishbowl head. You know, somewhere out there, Quentin Beck is probably really pissed off at all this copyright infringement going on. Now, before he ends up getting much further into the base, Tony is hailed by Dr. Ware. In the last issue, we learned that he is a communications genius, and it seems that he's actually been able to hack the comms inside Iron Man's own helmet, allowing them to have a long overdue little one-on-one in cyberspace. Again, this scene does an excellent job juxtaposing the two men right down to having them be lit by yellow and blue. In some regards, these two are very similar. In others, they're completely different. They talk about their families. Tony says that his parents weren't around much because, you know, what with the whole being dead thing, and Ware can relate, his parents weren't around much either. No, not because they were dead, just because they were really neglectful and inattentive. It's one of the big reasons he pushed himself to try and be a teacher, to be the role model and friend that people needed in their lives. It's also why he pursued communications as his major. He says that we might might very well be heading to an all-robotic, all-tech future, but that still doesn't mean that people aren't going to need a way to connect with one another, like him and Tony are connecting right now. Tony had thought he liked this guy before when he gave him that award, but now he really knows he likes him, so much to the point he's actually willing to confide in him that he has hit a major creative brick wall recently. It seems that he's been unable to create anything new, instead just upgrade stuff he already had. But now he thinks if the two of them can work together and put their big science heads together, surely they can end up finding some way to escape. Now, elsewhere back at Gamma Base, Pepper Potts and the cavalry end up returning, only to find that Citizen V has already broken into the facility, which should be impossible as Tony set up the security himself. Once again, this new version of V's behavior is rather interesting. They don't want to fight, they say they only stopped by to reclaim something that belonged to them that Tony took. You know, I can't prove it yet, but seeing that this brand new version of Citizen V has been given such a place of prominence and that Fixer plays such a major part in this first story arc, I am almost certain that Joshua Williamson is building up to some sort of classic return for the OG Thunderbolts team. So, you know, let's come back to this one in a couple months and see if I'm right or wrong. If I'm right, y'all owe me a Coke. If I'm wrong, poison. And if I'm kind of right and kind of wrong, poison. Now, back over at the helicarrier, Tony uses the same communication tech that Ware was using to talk to him to try and seek an audience with Madame Mask. He does the classic heroic, hey, if you let everyone go and stop now, I'll go easy on ya. Mask also attempts to try and sell Tony on their brand new mission, saying that they are pushing science further than ever before, and if Tony agrees to join AIM, they can rule it together. She'll even let most of the prisoners go. Why most and not all, you might be wondering? Yeah, well, some are already dead, as we saw in the previous issue, meaning that if Tony wasn't mad before, he is definitely mad now and wants to take Mask down twice as hard. And for a second there, it seems like that's exactly what happens. Tony's armor comes out guns absolutely blazing, only to end up getting shot by a brand new state-of-the-art laser weapon that breaks down chemical compounds to their base components. A pretty solid weapon, one that Mask thinks has delivered her the victory, only here's the thing, when her goon squad opens up the suit, they don't find Tony inside. Yes, that's right, with Dr. Ware's help, Tony found a way to pilot his armor remotely, and the fact that he is willing to sacrifice it if it means saving Ware and the other prisoners speaks volumes about the kind of themes and ideas Joshua Williamson is playing within this story. Again, it's about the man inside the suit, not just the suit itself. Now, Tony rallies with the other prisoners, but the question then becomes how the hell are they going to escape? You'll remember the meathead scientist from a couple issues ago? Well, it seems that he spent his time in prison building a massive bomb, one that goes off, meaning that good guy and bad guy alike are going to have to rush if they hope to escape. Poor Ware ends up getting shot during the group's flight to freedom. I don't think he's dead, but he does end up getting one hell of a facial scar, which certainly, you know, in comic books leads you to at least look villainous, but in a surprising twist of fate, it's not actually Ware we have to worry about, it's the Fixer, who comes out packing the brand new advanced Iron Man armor, built from all the different scientists' salvage tech. Now the Fixer thinks he finally has the means to settle the score with Tony once and for all and prove who the real smart one actually is. And there you have it, everybody. 2 big Marvel books on what was admittedly a lighter week in comics this week, but that's still not to say that I didn't have a lot of fun with what I read. Spider-Man continues to chug along. Again, Death Spirial, I thought I was going to hate it, but I'm actually surprised by a bunch of the different curveballs they're throwing, and particularly the focus on characterization. If not for Peter, then definitely for MJ, for Dylan, and especially for Eddie, who, again, as I said in the video proper, I really wonder what they're going to do with this character next. I think they announced that he is going to have a special tie-in issue for Queen in Black where it looks like he might have a symbiote. Maybe it's just a cover. I don't know. I hope they don't leave Eddie out in the cold for too long. I know the Donny Cates era was probably the best creative era the character ever had, and it would be a shame to see them not capitalize on this. Maybe he'll slumber for a little bit, and maybe they'll do something with him if they ever get that Sony animated Venom project off the ground. As far as the rest of it, again, continues to be fun. There's good action, there's excitement, there's drama, there's intrigue. Torment, as far as villains go, I actually kind of like how they play him off as this super serious foil to the funny and chaotic Carnage. Hopefully when we actually do learn his origin story, it's something worthwhile. Then we have the cousin factor. I know it is such a tired trope at this point to trot out secret family members that characters did not know they had previously, but damn it, if I'm not something of a sucker for this, especially because Spider-Man himself within the story is just as confused and just as shocked as anyone at the idea that A, he might have a cousin, and B, this cousin might very well know that he is Spider-Man now. I'm definitely interested to see where this one goes. Overall, I would give it a 7 out of 10, you know, maybe not as good as the Venom issue from last week, but you know what, it doesn't, you know, completely squander the lead it was given, and here's hoping that this story can actually wrap up in a cool, meaningful, exciting way. And then after that, we have Iron Man issue number 4, and man, you know what, this one was a slow burn, but I think this series under Joshua Williamson has finally officially hit its stride. This was a great issue, again, because it focused on Tony Stark as a character. They did such a wonderful job juxtaposing him not only with Dr. Ware, a character who is becoming really interesting and really compelling in his own right, but also contrasting him with Madame Mask and the Fixer and all of these characters who are, you know, so tech-forward to the point that they almost, you know, forget humanity. They forget to see people as people, and it's something that Tony himself never actually wants to do. Yeah, you could argue, is it a little trite? Is it a little well-worn that, once again, Tony's biggest threat is that he needs to fight a bigger, more evil version of the Iron Man armor? Yeah, I know we've done that like 1.5 million times before, but you know what? Tropes are tropes for a reason. They work because they work, and hey, Fixer building his own advanced AIM Iron Man suit, that's pretty cool. It looks pretty awesome. Again, I love the use of Fixer. I always thought that character could be capable of so much more. He even says in the story, I've been a hero, I've been a villain, you know, I have walked in every world, and yet I hate Tony Stark, but I also respect him, and maybe by essentially becoming him or becoming like him, I will get the respect that I have always deserved. Overall, I would give this one an 8 out of 10. This one was, you know, a real great ride for me. Real fun from start to finish. I dug the hell out of this one. And, yeah, that'll just about do it for me, everyone. I know this is a little shorter than we're used to. Hopefully, I will add a special bonus Marvel book when I talk about the DC offerings this Sunday, so get ready for that. We got a big video essay hitting on Friday that was supposed to be a short one, but it grew into a massive monster of a video, so get excited for that. It's a big visual history, and yeah, I hope you're doing well. I hope you read something good this week, and be sure to join me again on the channel all throughout this week, because we're going to get to do it multiple times. So until we meet again, everyone, bye-bye.